was. So what are we going to do about interferon then? Since, I mean, you know about the study that's been, well, Hans has got a study going, but...
Yes, but it's not a randomized study. Okay, so...
But look at Ron's study. I mean, that's not even recruited yet, and it's been going on for how many years?
Yeah, well...
Getting people to come on to that study
Let's think about that study. So, such is the enthusiasm for doing hydroxyurea versus interferon study. We've been talking about doing that study for 10 years now in the UK. We have just managed to open and we're recruiting patients. We will recruit that study.
Oh, you're doing it? Who's doing it?
We're doing Ron's study. So the MPDRC study is open in over 30 countries.
Right.
Will be open in over 30 countries worldwide. You have to remember is it's much more difficult to open studies in Europe than it is in the US, especially academic studies, because every single country has its own approval status and approval process, so it's much more challenging. We are recruiting patients every week into that study and we will finish it. At the same time, AOP Pharma are also doing a randomised study with their version of interferon against hydroxycarbonide. That's a really interesting drug, I think. But we're really committed to doing this. We're talking to patients about it. We're getting grants to run it because we think it's a basic, fundamental question that we ethically have to answer.
So that patients have the option, though, entering that trial and still not being on the active arm, getting an aspirin or placebo.
There's no placebo in that study.
There was an aspirin.
No, there is no placebo in that study, so let's get that right.
Okay.
The Ron's study, MPDRC 112, is hydroxyurea plus aspirin versus interferon plus aspirin. No placebo, no substandard care.
And no absence of aspirin on either arm?
Only if the patient would not be given aspirin in a standard way. If you're a patient that's had peptic ulceration or is allergic to aspirin, you're not going to get it, whichever arm you're on. But aspirin would be given as per standard of care, and it's one drug versus another, no placebo.
So what's the difficulty in recruiting? Why is it not recruiting?
So one is actually getting the study open is a big challenge in Europe.
But it's been open here for a long time.
Two is the behaviour of the clinicians in actually being a firm advocate of one drug or another. If you line 10 of us up, half of us would advocate one drug and half of us would advocate another, and most of us would be really individualising care to what our patient needs are. Both drugs are reimbursed.
One's insignificant, one's expensive.
Right? Yeah, one is significantly more expensive. Right. So you could also argue, and I'm not going to do that with you, whereas in terms of health economics, we also should answer that question. So let's take the PT1 study for an example. That saves £20 million a year because we're not using anagrelide as a first-line therapy. That money that can then be used for other agents. Great example, ruxolitinib. But why do patients not enter that study? Because they can get both drugs. So if a patient says to me, Claire, why should I go into this study? And I would say to them, honestly, you don't have to go into that study. We will look after you whatever you choose. If you go into the study, your care will be provided by a bespoke study team. You will have a drug that you could get outside of the study. You will be contributing to fundamental research in your disease. You will be ultimately allowing us to collect data that will influence your management and management of patients in the future. Also, another important fact, and very happy for you to show this, it is a well-known fact that patients who are managed in clinical trials, even if we are just comparing basic standard treatments, as we are with hydroxyurea versus interferon, those patients have better outcomes than patients who are treated off clinical trials.
Because of more intensive care in clinical trials?
Because
of observation.
Of more careful observation and adherence to protocol. It's one. You just look at Brady Stein's poster here. Practice for PV patients varies wildly.
The altruism appeal, though, is significant. I mean, I think that's the big differentiator, since people can get the drug.
Why do patients donate money to MPN Forum? Why do they donate money to MPD Foundation? Why do they donate money to MPN Boys? They donate it because they want to contribute to understanding, etc., in their diseases, and they want to read more of what you produce, for example. But I think the issue is you have to be absolutely clear to the patient that there's an altruistic element to this.
Claire, that's great stuff.